I'm here with Professor Antonio Sgorbissa from the University of Genova, and we will talk with him about the CARRESSES project. So thanks for being here. Could you please describe the project in 3 sentences?
Okay, the CARRESSES project is a joint European-Japanese project that is funded by the European Commission and by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communication of Japan. And the aim of the project is to design culturally competent robots. That is, robots that are able to choose their goals, choose their actions, and in general behave and speak in different ways depending on the cultural identity of the person they are interacting with.
So what then is actually a culturally competent robot?
Okay, let me say first of all that the motivation for this work comes from a field which is called transcultural nursing. And the transcultural nursing experts have shown that it is very important to take into account cultural factors in healthcare. Without taking cultural factors into account, the health intervention may have a lower impact or even fail. So our hypothesis is that also robots should take into account cultural factors, which means that the robot, for example, may use different gestures depending on the culture it is interacting with. I make you an example, a very simple example. Greeting, you may greet people by waving a hand with a bow, with a namaste gesture, but this is also relevant concerning the topics of conversation. For example, you will remind to a person, maybe in Europe, about Christmas, to an older person, that is very important. And maybe in India, you will remind the person about the Diwali festival, which is a typical cultural festival. So this is very important to make the person accept the robot more likely.
So that's very interesting. And what would you say are the main objectives of the project besides like having the robot being culturally sensitive?
I would say that the main objective is really to have the robot culturally sensitive, and we apply this work to healthcare, but in fact I think that the principles are more general and they can be applied in different fields of robotics. So concerning healthcare, we will test the hypothesis that culturally competence is important in a network of healthcare facilities in the third year of the project, at Vigna Healthcare, which is partner of the project, and also in the UK, and in Japan we'll test the approach in the Isui facility, which is a care home. So what we will try is to do is a robot for healthcare, for assisting older person that is culturally competent and can perform different activities, of course, in a culturally competent way.
I mean, speaking of different cultures, I mean, you already mentioned that CARRESSES is partially funded by the European Commission and partially by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communication of Japan. So is there any difference in how robots are perceived in Japan and in Europe?
I thank you for your question. I would like to say something which is very related to this. When we speak about different cultures, it's very important to not to have a stereotyped vision of cultures. And this is one of the very important aims of our project. We want to take into consideration the fact that national differences exist, ethnic differences exist, but we don't want to have a stereotype representation. Culture takes different forms in different individuals, and then we want to adapt the system to different persons, to individuals. We take into account the individual characteristics. So in the same line, it's very difficult to say if there is a real difference between, for example, Europe and Japan. There are many studies in this sense. Of course, there is something valid in them. Their answers are sometimes contradictory. There is a general view that in Japan people have a familiarity with robots since a longer time because robots are, especially humanoid robots, are very present in animes, literature, mangas, so they are very familiar with that, with those. A fact is that one of our partners is Software Robotics Europe, and we will use the robot Pepper as the platform for our experiments. And for example, Pepper is sold and used in private homes in Japan and not in Europe. So this is a fact which clarifies there is a difference. Also in Japan, in care homes, the Pepper robot is already used for entertainment, for activities, but as far as I know, there is no Pepper robot working 24/7 in a care home by assisting a person. So what we want to do is to make a big advancement in this sense and making the robot, of course, culturally competent, which is the main aim.
Right. And that sounds like a tough challenge, actually, because also in Europe there is not the one culture. There are, in fact, different cultures, aren't there?
Oh yes, in fact, there is not an European culture, there are many, and as I said, there are different variants because every one of us is peculiar, so this makes even the problem is even bigger. And this is, as I said, our aim. From a concrete point of view, let me say that we will make experiments with 3 cultural groups, because we have to make a choice, which will be English, Indian, living in the UK for practical reasons, because three of our partners, in fact, are in the UK, right, and with the Japanese group. Right. And sorry, let me say a very important thing, that this is a highly interdisciplinary project. We have partners which are technical, University of Genova, University of Örebro in Sweden, Software Robotics in France, we have the JAIST in Japan and Chubu University, but we also have Middlesex University with transcultural nursing experts, so they are not roboticists. We have University of Bedfordshire that will make the pilot study and the evaluation at the end of the project. We have Nagoya University with a psychological background, and finally Advinia Healthcare is our partner, which provides a network of care homes for testing. So it's a highly interdisciplinary effort to achieve this result.
Focusing on the care homes, so concerning the duties and responsibilities in the care of the elderly, which tasks do you think will in the future be performed by robots and which tasks by humans?
It's difficult to say in general concerning, because I cannot say where technology will move, and also there are many societal constraints, legal constraints, ethical constraints. Concerning our project, we are not making a robot which aims at physical assistance. So what we aim at is cognitive support, so maybe remind you about important events, helping the person to keep an active style of life, eating a healthy diet, keep in touch with friends, or remind how to perform simple activities. We are getting new inputs from end users when we are in events, when we show the robots, so we get really the information from the real people about their experience and what would be needed. But as I said, everything is related to cognitive assistance, in our case, not physical assistance. That's very important.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. And my next question regarding the timeline, what are the next steps of your project?
Okay, we are in a very important phase now because the first year has passed. We have prepared the framework. We have a cultural knowledge base which is able to encode cultural information. We have a cultural aware planner. We have a cultural behavior, and we have guidelines which have been produced by transcultural experts on how the robot should behave. So the next phase, the second year, will be mostly aimed at implementing these guidelines in the robot's behavior, in the cultural knowledge base, and so on. This will be the second year of the project. And then the third year of the project will be almost entirely devoted to testing our hypothesis and measuring the outcomes in a quantitative and qualitative way. So we have established a very rigorous protocol to be able at the end to say to the community if cultural competence is worth investigating in robotics or is not worth investigating, which may happen. We don't know which the outcomes will be, of course.
And if I would like to know more information about the project, where would I have to look?
We have a website we are very proud of, and the address is CARRESSESrobot.org. So feel free to come and watch it.
Have a look at the website. This was Professor Antonio Sgorbissa from the University of Genova, and we were talking about the CARRESSES project.